Hi, my name is Melissa Tier. Right now I'm a PhD student at Princeton at the School of Public and International Affairs. I'm in the Science, Technology, and Environmental Policy program, and I study climate adaptation policy. Earlier, when I was younger, especially in college, I majored in psychology. I was studying a lot of social science, kind of unrelated to the environment, and I was interested in potentially becoming a social worker. And so I did an internship in a hospital, in the emergency room of a hospital one summer at Bellevue Hospital in Manhattan, and had a really interesting and kind of formative experience there. Right after I returned to college, Hurricane Sandy hit Manhattan and hit the region, particularly hit Lower Manhattan very hard, and hit Bellevue Hospital particularly badly. The hospital flooded and it closed for the first time in its long history. Patients were evacuated. It was a huge mess and really affected a lot of vulnerable populations in Lower Manhattan. And so I was already getting very interested and concerned about climate change, but for me this was a really powerful moment of seeing this interconnection between infrastructure and social systems and things like hurricanes. And I became really fascinated with that intersection, and that remains the focus of my work today. I research and work on climate adaptation policy, so very related to what I was talking about before. It's kind of how we develop government and other policies that help us prepare and adapt to the changing climate. Things like increasing frequency and intensity of coastal storms, rainfall, sea level rise, and also extreme heat. Those are some of the main natural hazards that are worsening due to anthropogenic climate change in this region. And so I work with New Jersey state policies and New York City policies, kind of generally in the region, to think about how do we prepare for some of these changes. So one example is that there are, unfortunately and very concerningly, increasing coastal areas that will be more permanently inundated. They're going to be underwater, basically. And so we have to think about, what does it mean to have housing development or other infrastructure in those regions? And so there are some ideas, but it's complicated and contentious about should a government encourage people to move away from the coastline? And how do we do that in a equitable way, in a way that's giving people choice and also still preserving their sense of community? It's a really complex type of policy to design. So that's a lot of where my PhD work is right now. I think more recently with Ida, which was a different type of storm and really affected the region through really, really intense rainfall. Some of our thinking is changing about different types of hazards that we need to manage. It's not just about coastal storm surge, but about rainfall patterns and extreme heat as well, and also how these problems can interact with each other. So if if a neighborhood is experiencing multiple at once, like a blackout or brownout of electricity that occurs after a storm during a really high heat period, we have to start thinking about these events concurrently. So that's something I'm actively thinking about. For my PhD, I had a slightly different career, but related to the environment. So I was the sustainability manager for Swarthmore College in the Office of Sustainability. So that I did that for 5 years. So it was really interesting being an administrator, a staff person in higher ed, just on a very different side of things, not doing research, but instead kind of designing programs for the institution and thinking about all sorts of environmental efforts that a fairly large institution would want to pursue, ranging from our building energy systems and how do we reduce our energy consumption, I did a lot with managing our waste systems and composting, and then also environmental education for both our students and the broader campus community. So it's really interesting now being a grad student again, coming from that role. So I like that I'm coming to my graduate school research, having the experience of just a very different role than research of like working with community members and thinking about communication and education in a way that was trying to be like very inclusive and yeah. There's so much happening on the local level. The New Jersey DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, is very, very forward-thinking and a leader in the country at the state level. So a couple years ago, they passed an environmental justice law. They have these new like flood disclosure laws, all sorts of interesting, innovative ideas for how we are dealing with all sorts of issues related to the climate crisis. So there's a lot of opportunities to get engaged with policy at the state and local level, and also activism as well. I want to point out, there's the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance. There are a lot of local environmental groups, and then of course we're right outside of New York City in this region, and New York City is also a national and even global leader in a lot of its climate and sustainability and environmental justice policy, as well as the larger stakeholder community of nonprofits, activists, and so on. So we're in a really kind of exciting location. There's a lot of opportunities, and I think it's also important to remember that 10 years ago, the previous time that the United States, for example, pulled out of the Paris Agreement and at the federal level was reducing its activities, there was this huge increase in local action from universities to municipalities to churches, just a huge range of institutions and organizations that stepped up to fill that gap. And I think we're early days right now, but I am hopeful that we're going to be seeing that again in the coming years. So just find a group that kind of matches your interests. But the environment and climate, it connects to everything. So I think it's pretty easy to find a way to connect any interest and an organization that someone might already be involved with, and find a way to connect that to environmental action.